How's everybody doing this morning? All right. I'm going to have the panel introduce themselves. I know who all these wonderful people are, but you should absolutely know who they are, especially in the context of this conversation. Can I have you, let's grab another mic there, Randolph, for me, please. Thank you. Yes, and Randolph can go ahead and start since you have the microphone. There you go. All right, let's start with Randolph.
Okay, Randolph Bell. We've got a few different entities that we operate under, a couple of LLCs and then a nonprofit. RBA Creative is both a consultancy and it's a space. It's a gallery that operates as a Black women's art collective, photography studio, and just community convening space. That's in the Laurel District on MacArthur. Creative Development Partners is a community development, real estate development, investment, and consulting firm. And then we've got a nonprofit that started as Support Oakland Artists, and we've just rebranded as Evoke, EVOAK. We're doing bigger stuff outside of Oakland, but we wanted to keep that nod to Oakland, and that's creative community development in general.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Kalila Haynes. I'm an urban planner with the City of Oakland in the Planning and Building Department. I'm really interested in urban planning as a way to create communities where people want to be, where people can thrive and live successful lives, and happy to be here today. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm Christy Johnston-Limon. I'm currently the Deputy Director of Economic and Workforce Development at the City of Oakland. But my career in the arts actually started here in Oakland at Destiny Art Center, where I was the Executive Director for 7 years and had the opportunity to build a permanent space and a permanent home in North Oakland for Destiny. And then I moved on to do the same for Youth Speaks, another beloved organization here in the Bay Area in San Francisco. And so I bring that lens of creative community development as a displacement prevention strategy, as a wealth building strategy, as a stabilization strategy, and come from a lens of really loving my arts and creative community. So happy to be here.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. My name is Ryan Nicole Austin. I'm a creative entrepreneur, multi-hyphenate. I am an artist, actress, athlete, activist, capital A activist. I've been in arts advocacy for 20 years now. I served as the executive director of a group called Youth Movement Records. We created satellite offices in Oakland, Richmond, Chinatown, and the Fox Theater, and incubated OSA's Step It Up program. I went from that to being a consultant. I've been an artist all along in spoken word, music, and theater, and I'm currently producing my musical, Co-Founders the Musical, which is about the influx of technology and Silicon Valley into regions like Oakland, and it's really about encouraging the notion that we're all investors and creators of the future. And that we have a stake in the future and that we've always been innovators. And we can talk more about that another time.
I just want to say Co-Founders was a phenomenal play. I had the opportunity to go see it, and as a Black girl from West Oakland, and I told you this, I was crying for like half the play because I felt represented. I felt like I saw so much of myself in Asada, and when she does bring it back, you absolutely need to go see it.
Thank you.
Yes.
And I should say that my whole objective is to leverage art for the greater good of the people, leverage art for policy. It's always been that way, and so this piece is a major sledgehammer, I think, in an attempt to push forward cultural strategies in policy.
Absolutely. And I realized I did not introduce myself. My name is Rashida Chase. I am District 3's cultural strategist in government. For my second term, we just a week ago, won state designation as a cultural district for the Black Arts Movement Business District. And so we will be working with community to activate the district and to really show people what Oakland is and has been, the cultural mecca that it has been for so long. I am so excited. So I'm an artist, but after watching my friends lose their housing, lose their workspaces, and lose spaces to perform, I was trying to figure out ways to do something about it. And I didn't know exactly what that looked like, but I just started showing up to meetings. There was the downtown specific plan process that was going on. And I started to educate myself about just like how things work at the city, and how things get done. And so I love that Christy is here, and we can have a conversation about how artists and creatives interact with the city in terms of business. And I think that this is really a special time for Oakland right now. We are in a bit of a renaissance. It feels like there's a lot of really cool things that are happening. Earlier this year, I was somewhere and I was like, do you realize that there were three movies at once that were either about Oakland or filmed in Oakland or by an Oaklander? And we, as a sector, arts and culture is not as respected as other sectors. And so one of the things that I appreciate about the process of the cultural district designation is seeing how invested the city was in the process and how much support that we received from the city to get that done. And so I want to appreciate that. But we're here to talk about the business of culture. And so I want to ask Ryan, as someone who is a purveyor of culture in Oakland, and someone who is also a businesswoman. You run a consultancy. How have your interactions with the city been, and what are some things that you think that, or what are some things that could have made your experience better?
So you already know how it went. Thank you. Yeah, so I've been working in arts advocacy, as I said before, 20 years now. So I've engaged with multiple administrations at multiple levels in the city, as both as an entrepreneur and as an executive director of an organization that I didn't found, but was responsible for. I've had to navigate the city at different levels. I've also had to navigate it as a young person, and now as an older person. It's a different experience. As a young person, I definitely felt like it wasn't very porous. I still feel the same now, but I'm 20 years in, and so I've got more relationships. I've got more navigability in the city. But as a young person with more energy, enthusiasm, and ideas, there was no way for me to access the city. We were extremely challenged to make inroads with city council members, with staffers, and certainly with the mayor at the time and her administration. At the time that I was trying to navigate the city offices as a business person, at that time, there was curfews. There were just punitive laws on the books and policies on the books that were making it very apparent that young people weren't invited in the process of thinking about a city, which was odd at the time because the city was 30%, 33%, which it kind of tends to be young people. Right, at that time, it was very clear that we weren't invited, we were not welcomed, and it was best that we would either get out of the city or just be quiet and accept our lot. As an older person navigating city processes, city offices, so on and so forth, I can't say that it's become more welcoming. I've just become more knowledgeable. I find that there are the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing. It depends on who's in the administration and who's making things happen, and who in that administration has relationships with the different heads of the city departments. And that lets you know, as a person who is trying to make inroads, as an entrepreneur, in policy, whatever, that your relationship is more important than actual knowledge about city functions or processes. And that's just the way that that's my philosophy. That's the way that I've navigated the city by and large. I think what that really speaks to is the disorganization. It speaks to, the old, and I know this through my work with the cultural strategist, just old systems that haven't been updated, that haven't been communicated to staffers who were working for the city. There's a lot that needs to change to make things better. What would have made things better? Well, certainly, I think when I was younger, I think just an openness to converse with young people, to listen to and hear from young people, the folks who were committed to growing up and being in the city and reinvesting in the city. That reticence was challenging, and it made it very difficult to have young people involved in policy making. We mostly inspired apathy. As an older person, I still think, systems could stand to change, and I know it's no small undertaking, but listening to artists, for example, the Cultural Strategist and Government Program is, I think, a beautiful, radical cost savings measure that makes major impacts on the city. And I'm saying that I've not been a cultural strategist. I've been a person who has kind of been above the cultural strategist, trying to tell the story of the cultural strategist. And I've witnessed that many cultural strategists in government over the 3 different seasons have made major impacts on city processes and relationships with the citizenship and the city government.
Amazing. So you talked a little bit about policy, and that's something that I think a lot of people are not aware of that impacts how things happen, where things happen. So Kalila or Christy, can you talk to me about ways that the city is trying to, or policies that the city has enacted? We talk about things that people don't really realize are governing the way that things are happening in the city, where things are being built. When new bikeways come, you have what's called a general plan, which is kind of the plan for the entire city. Can be 25 to 40 years. How long is Oakland's general plan? It's 30?
It's about a 20-year timeline.
20-year
2045 is how.
Okay, and so then under the general plan, you have what's called the specific plan, and those are usually about a specific area. So we have a downtown specific plan, there's a Broadway Valdez plan, there's a West Oakland plan. And so those talk about what's going to happen, what'll be developed, what the land use, what transportation looks like in those areas. And then within the general plan, there's different elements, and you have housing elements, transportation elements, but a lot of these things govern where things happen. And so, as Ryan was saying about policies that prevented people from being in spaces and things like that, what are some things that the city is doing to try to improve, one, relationship with the community, but also so that the community can do things that generate economic activity and are not preventing whole groups of people, like young people, from being able to participate in economic activity in Oakland?
Sure, I can start on talking about the general plan and some of the work that we're doing there. So like Rashida mentioned, the general plan is this 20-year plan that is supposed to look at how we can create a better Oakland to serve all of the residents, all the people who live here, work here, play here, exist here. And so, in this process, we really tried to take a really inclusive community engagement approach. And so we've been working with youth, we've been working with different community partners to reach populations that don't usually participate in these sort of long-range planning processes. So we have a lot of different partners that we're working with, like the Black Cultural Zone, like Deepwater's Dance Theater in West Oakland, like the Malonga Arts Center. And so, you know, part of the work to like reach artists and to reach young people is ongoing. We've had a lot of focus groups that include artists. We've been working really closely with the Cultural Affairs Commission. We've done a few projects with Oakland youth, like we worked with Oakland High School to do like this capstone project for their 11th grade class about the general plan and about how they want to see youth like reflected in Oakland's vision, because they are going to be the ones who are living here as adults in the next 20 years, right, building a life here. And so, you know, some of the policies that we're trying to push forward, like we've been doing this process for about 4 years, since 2021, and we've heard really loud and clear that people want like community gathering spaces. People want to see arts and culture uplifted as an economic driver for the city. People want to see the city invest in strategies that, you know, recognize Oakland's cultural impact historically, and also plan for that impact to be even greater in the future. And so Rashid also mentioned the Downtown Oakland Specific Plan. So that was a plan specifically for the downtown area that really highlighted culture keeping as essential strategy for the city. Some of the work that's in that plan includes things like, you know, looking at our ground floor commercial spaces and how we can incentivize developers to make sure that they're partnering with nonprofits who know how to curate arts and cultural tenants so that arts and cultural uses are elevated in the ground floor. Looking at ways to make sure that the city invests in things like streetscape design, wayfinding, stuff that reflects the cultural history of the different areas around Oakland that are important, like the Black Arts Business and Movement District. Yeah, and I can stop there and turn it over to you, Christy.
Thank you. I think those are really important examples, and contextually, a plan also gives investors and developers who are looking at where to invest and how to do it a roadmap that has been vetted, and when done properly, which I think the Downtown Oakland Specific Plan took 8 or 9 years to develop because of the deep community engagement and, quite frankly, the pushback on the initial proposals that the city came up with that didn't feel inclusive enough, that did not reflect the vision that the community had for itself and for its future, this agency that we wanted reflected in those plans. And so now that that's been adopted, the next step is to actually form the policies and bring them through the city council process. And that is what Kalila and her peers are doing at the Planning and Building Department, crafting those policies that will loosen some of the ground floor retail to house pop-ups, to house temporary activation as we see that the economy has changed. And so those are really practical policy changes that will ultimately benefit the foot traffic and the businesses that are here in downtown. Maybe another thing to bring up is the concept of entertainment and activation zones. That's something that our council members have also been working on closely with economic and workforce development. Not exactly to mirror what's happening in San Jose and San Francisco, but we've seen where when you create these zones that allow for more activities that generate foot traffic and activation, that can help also restore confidence, increase safety in terms of foot traffic, and we don't need to police our way into safety. It really is about creating spaces for families, for young people, for our elders to be able to interact and to celebrate Oakland culture. So that's really part of the vision behind creating those entertainment zones. And that policy is currently being developed. And that's another way that arts and culture community can be involved in framing what that will look like.
Yeah, and just figuring, another thing that I'm curious, like how do you all feel that the best ways for community to engage and to be able to impact policy? What are some of the ways that community can show up and actually impact those things?
To your point around relationships, that is still very much how the city operates. And what I have seen being the director of a division is having to bring that voice constantly into the conversation with my peers. The way that we're approaching the work is I've been living here almost 20 years. I relocated from San Francisco to Oakland in 2008. And so I've seen the city go through the ups and downs of our economic shifts and our policy shifts. And depending on who's in charge, the community is either really engaged or shut out, right? So there is a lot of power that comes from the mayor's office and from depending on what district you live in, which city council member represents you. How involved are they allowing community to be? And so one of the perspectives I'm bringing in as a leader in one of our departments, a really important one, a really visible one, is my entire team has districts that they're responsible for, community groups that they are responsible for and must engage with. And so we're out of the office. Like, I'm rarely sitting at my desk. And that is on purpose. It starts with community, former community organizer. So that's one way that we've really pushed, at least within my department, to be much more engaged and much more in touch with our community. Language capacity is another big deal, and so I've been hiring folks who are bilingual or bicultural, folks who live in Oakland, so they have a direct connection to the neighborhood. So that's another way that we've tried to engage community, is to actually have people working at the city who are from here and or who live here or run a business here. The other way is we're partnering with our city council members, and we're staffing each council district office where we are responsible for connecting the dots. And so they have information, we have information, we're sharing and we're coordinating and collaborating, which gets tricky because the way our city is structured, we're actually not supposed to be in direct contact with our city council members as staff. And so there's a siloization that happens where you miss opportunities to coordinate and collaborate. And so I have to have either my boss or a city administrator that's part of those conversations, which makes things harder. And so what I would advise any community member that wants to be more engaged is to definitely not stop trying to communicate with the city council member. And then the mayor's office actually has, I think, like 12 staff, and they're all responsible for a particular area. And so figuring out who those people are, leadership changes and changes quite often, so that can be challenging and inaccessible. But that is what I have seen be successful, is when folks establish their relationships with their city council members, with the mayor's office, and then our responsibility as city departments is to establish relationships too in the community.
And Randolph. I'm curious about your experience, because you have interacted with the city in various ways, as an artist, as a developer, as someone, a community engagement director, or I wouldn't call you a community engagement director, but like doing a lot of community engagement around various projects that are happening around Oakland. And so what have been some of your roses and thorns in dealing with the city? What are some things, and what are some things that you feel like the city is doing really well?
I don't think it makes sense to talk about roses, to tell you the truth, because there's enough work to be done, right, in trying to untangle the thorns, right? A lot of times it's great to celebrate and all the rest of that good stuff, but there are enough thorns that we need to make this all easier for us, more mutually beneficial for us. To your question before about how do community members engage, you engage. Artists are the most disorganized group of folks like ever, right? They'll come out in a crisis, but you know what it takes to get this thing done. You gotta show up at Life Enrichment, you gotta show up at Community Economic Development Committee more than once, right? So next year will be 35 years for me in Oakland doing the same thing. I've had 5 commercial art spaces. We had the first gallery in the Uptown, and I have never gotten one city grant. In 35 years, 5 commercial art spaces, we're just doing what needs to be done to get what, so in your lead up to my question, is like, you've done this, this, and this. You do what you gotta do to do what you gotta do, right? Which does not mean a bumper sticker, it does not mean tweeting, it means showing up repeatedly in all the places that you need to show up. So that's that, and then before y'all start throwing tomatoes at me or some shit. And I'm probably gonna respond to this to add some texture to what others have said, or what was not said. There has always been a focus on downtown, at the expense of the neighborhoods, right? And so what I told the mayor is, and her staff, is while you're focusing on downtown, we don't live downtown. So it may be easier to get to support the neighborhoods, like my Laurel District, Heartlands, Deep East Oakland. It may be easier to get a neighbor to go to the Laurel, like your favorite spot now, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times a month than it is to gear up to come downtown, right? It's all dollars spent, it's all tax revenue, and that's literally all we're trying to do is generate tax dollars and create vibrancy in Oakland and across Oakland. If we have to do that just downtown, I'm not coming down here. Shit, I'm 50, I'm almost 58 years old, you know what I mean? I'm not coming down here to find a place to park and blah, blah, blah. And so I'm gonna just run through my list as, so we've created a they versus we, the city versus, right? Sometimes the they is us, because we don't show up, right? That I'll just say that. As it relates to working with the city, I tend to monitor, but I do not let that be a distraction, right? Because you can get caught up in the process. And oftentimes we are fighting over nickels. There's just no money, but we expend a lot of energy and, it's like we won. It's like white man can't jump, bro. It's like sometimes you win, you actually lose. You know what I mean? So we won, but when did we win? You know what I mean? There has never been a cabinet level position at the city, which means it's never been important enough to bake into the economic development policy. And what I always say about the arts is we make something out of nothing, right? Again, I was a working artist for many years. I would take a blank piece of paper, put something on it, and I would trade it in for money, right? And so it's the perfect economic model that the city has not figured out a way to capitalize. There are places in the middle of the desert that will just call themselves the Arts Center in the middle of Sedona. They said it, people come, spend money. We have got the primacy of Oakland in terms of the arts, culture, kind of the social primacy is unmatched, but we haven't figured out how to really trade that in for kind of economic vibrancy. Somebody mentioned the bike lanes. We have capital improvement, the CIP projects. We're supposed to be getting money out of, a lot of these projects, but who's monitoring where the money comes? Which projects are eligible, and how do we direct that money to what it is that we want? We just got the Cultural Affairs Commission back. I was a Cultural Affairs Commissioner for, years, 2000 to 2004 or something like that. Again, there's never been a policy level position, and so it always gets backburnered. And then I'll leave it at that for the moment. We've got more, but I know you got
Thank you. I do want to follow up on what you were talking about with the neighborhoods and neighborhood investment. So that's what I did my first 10 years out of college, was as a community organizer, work in, I'll call them disinvested, marginalized redline communities in San Francisco and our southeast neighborhoods. And what I found was there was quite a bit of strength within the small business community in those corridors, and it was about harnessing that and then drawing attention to City Hall about these areas that were where there were lots of jobs and lots of economic activity, but were being ignored because of the weight of the sales tax revenue and the real estate transfer tax that is generated in downtown. Money talks. When I got to Oakland 2.5 years ago as the director of the business development division, changing that perspective was one of the hardest things that I had to tackle first. Yes, I get that the downtown is important in terms of visibility, that revenue we're talking about, but we didn't sell many buildings. My first year while I was there, we were dealing with a spike in crime, we were dealing with a negative narrative. I had to reframe the thinking of my peers and my colleagues to remember that there was an entire city. There's 1,600 business corridors in Oakland. That's 1,600 other communities that we need to be looking at in terms of generating sales tax revenue, real estate transfer tax, jobs, economic activity. So our Economic Development Action Plan, Randolph, actually has an arts and cultural strategy embedded in it because we understand the power of artists and creative communities and the businesses that are generating economic activity and jobs. And so I want to name that because I want you all to take a look at that strategy. We did retain the cultural affairs manager position, and they will be a colleague of mine working lockstep to ensure that our creatives are leading that economic development strategy in our neighborhoods, and to do so in concert with our planning and building folks and the land use and the zoning changes that we've made to facilitate that. So not to get super technical, but I agree with you. The focus has been on downtown for a long time, but that's changed.
Love that. So I want to encourage everybody to check out the downtown specific plan, the general plan, the economic development action plan when it comes out.
It comes out next month.
Comes out next month. And also check out my toolkit. I wrote a toolkit that includes all of the policy that Oakland already has on art and culture and it talks about how artists can use that to make change in Oakland. So check that out. We are now going to open this up to a Q&A. So does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, one thing we're going to do is Gloria and Ajay are going to be able to help bring the mic out to you. If you want to get on the mic to answer the question, it really does help us in the reproduction of this panel conversation, this super important panel conversation. If you have a question or comment that you'd like the panel to address, just raise your hand, we'll bring the mic to you.
Awesome. Thank you guys. I've learned so much, and I thank you for the notebook because there was a lot of notes to be taken here.
You're welcome.
Questions and comments. I have RBA. I pass by all the time and didn't quite know what it was, and I can't wait to pop in there. District 3, every district in Alameda County, Oakland, I work with and I patronize, and I love that we're talking about other parts of Oakland, like West Oakland and Deep East Oakland. The question I have is about pipeline when it comes to policy. I heard some words that are just terminology that I don't use every day. It's kind of over my head. But how are we preparing the next politician, the next cultural strategist, the next leaders, whether it's just from a regular population or from school? How does that work in any of your positions, but especially the policy pieces?
Yeah, I think that's actually where culture comes in, right? Like it is incumbent. I was observing this conversation and just listening and just hearing so much. There's so much burden on us as citizens. Read the downtown specific plan, read this plan, come to the office, be at the meetings, do this, do that. Not to say that the staff and city council doesn't have a lot to do, because you all have plenty to do as well. But there's a lot of burden. Part of the lifting of the burden comes, I think, from the artists. I think the artists fit these really special places. You were talking about how the department staff and the city council are not allowed to speak to each other. One really successful example that I saw in terms of a go-between is the cultural strategist in government, I'm pointing to Yvette, was able to be a go-between between two different departments, bring people in, have that communication happen, and that was within the city. I think culture, period, does the work of translating, what is happening in some of these larger spaces, some of these kind of nebulous spaces. I think culture does a good job of communicating the importance and making what is happening, certainly in Oakland, and Oakland culture makers do a good job of understanding what is happening politically and communicating that back to our populace. what we have to do, and this goes back to the burden back on the citizens, is encourage our young people, whoever wants to be in that pipeline, to pay attention to what some of the culture makers are doing and saying, because the messages are there. And I'm biased. I'm a culture maker, and I'm making culture that is intent upon translating some of these very dense topics and conversations back to our community to convey the importance of engagement. But I think that is one major area that culture has an opportunity, both of communicating to the power brokers and communicating to the power brokers and community, and hold standing as the pipeline, at least in terms of the conversation.
Yeah, I just think we got to get our numbers up in a sustained fashion. I think we got to get our numbers up. That's the only thing anybody responds to. And we're also always relying, again, on the politicians to do something, right? But those are like 2, sometimes 1.5 to 2-year or 4-year cycles, right? So again, we're not doing the other work. So I think the comprehensive and sustained civic engagement is a key part of this that it typically does not happen, right? I've been through too many of these crisis situations when they were defunding the Malanga, when they were defunding the cultural arts department, that one of those other times, right? And you got a gang of folks to show up, but they weren't really understanding the gravity of the situation. They didn't understand how it all worked, right? So they showed up. They're not showing up for that next one, right? Or the next one, or those committee meetings. And so I think that, along with, collectively showing our power, because ultimately it's organizing around the vote. Right? So that's the only thing that offsets kind of the money piece in this. And even if it's not the artists themselves, it's the broader community and the allies. Because to get a bunch of artists out, anything is possible, not everything is probable. It's just not probable that that's going to happen. But we've got allies, non-artists, lawyers, right, who are in our midst. That's all they got to contribute. Right, and so that again gets our numbers up, and I often use a baking analogy. Baking is science, cooking is a philosophy. Takes the right ingredients in the right amounts and in the right order. Right, so somebody has to be following a recipe. You know what I mean? We can't go all storm the castle first. Right. Somebody has got to be doing the groundwork. So that's what I would say.
So I'm also aware that there are groups that are working to align strategies with things like the Jobs First report or Jobs First initiative, where the governor talks about wanting to support arts and culture sector. And so some of these programs have not emerged into public consciousness, but I am aware of a few things and some folks that I'm planning to work with for the Black Arts Movement Business District to create a program for young people who are in our high schools to become culture workers. We have lots of arts and cultural organizations within downtown, specifically, which is the area that the BAMD is in. And so we have 2 high schools. There's Oakland School for the Arts and Envision Academy, and then Met West, which is not in this district, but it's close by. And so I really want to be able to work with youth. And I speak in schools. I am on the board of the Visual and Performing Arts academy at Skyline High School. I just spoke at college prep, and so I'm always talking to kids about how I got into my work, how I got into real estate development, but I'm also a cultural worker, and talking about how important policy is. And, it's really about exposure, because a lot of people don't know about a lot of these professions, like a city planner or a deputy director of economic and workforce development. A lot of times, unless they go to college, they don't find out about these things. So, and even not then sometimes. And so what I found a few years ago was working in some of the high schools is that a lot of these kids, like a lot of people fall into jobs because they were doing something else. And so, especially with artists, you have a lot of kids who are trying to be the artist and they want to be the person that's out front. That doesn't work out. And they're like, oh, I could become a production designer or a lighting tech or but you don't learn about it until you're in situations where you're dealing with those other kinds of people. And so I'm like, why don't we tell them about those things before they go to college so that they can actually have a plan and start to work towards doing those things? When you don't know things exist, you don't know that that's available to you. And so we will be doing some programming in the band around working with youth and making sure that they're aware that there are these cultural positions and arts and organizations that want to hire them. Anybody else have questions?
Yes, the croissants were lovely.
It wasn't about food.
Oh, okay.
I actually, my question is, I think for me, like, before I had a business downtown, I was in Pill Hill, right? I was on the outlayers of the city. So when I got closer to being downtown where all the things were happening, that's when I think my engagement increased. Mind you, I'd already invested in Oakland. By having a business and by being a property owner here, I was already invested in the city. But one thing that I did do was look at the future plans for the different areas where I was investing at. And I think part of the problem is, I think that we live in a different time frame of when we think things should happen, or how does it happen. And I think we could do a better job with all the AI and all of the technology we have to create a visual of what our city will look like. That's what I want to see. I want to be able to go up to this board up here and press buttons and say, oh my God, do you see what they're doing downtown? Do you see what the possibility of what could have been Howard Terminal was supposed to be? But the images, we're missing these images. I could read any kind of plan, but I need images. And that's how I think that we can engage various levels of people. And I think that's what we're missing.
I agree.
We're going to be doing that.
And it's interesting that you mentioned that. We did an Oakland art census in 2010. It was a social media platform. And just like anybody knows technology, I paid $9,500 for a WordPress site. It costs about $12 right now, right? But there weren't all the modules and all the rest of that shit, so they had to literally code in WordPress, $9,500. But it was, and it was in response to the Americans for the Arts. They do a drill down study on economic impact in different metros. Our metro is Oakland, Hayward, Fremont, something like that. But it showed that there was $100 million in economic activity in the arts that year. And I'm like, how the hell you come up with 100 million even? Right? And with any of these, you have to understand what the methodology is. The methodology that they use was Dun & Bradstreet and Economic Development Department. First of all, I don't know anybody but me who has a D&B number. And most artists don't show up with the with the Employment Development Department. They show up as architects that do, art on the side, waiters that do art, that sing on the side. They do not show up. And then there was no individual artist data in there. I'm like, well, that's ridiculous. So we were just trying to figure out literally how many artists, and it was a very simple study of, and we did have geocoding. So if you put in your information, we could show where the economic activity was. And at the time, we didn't have an art store in Oakland. There was 0 art stores, but thousands of artists. That didn't make sense. And so we were going to try and geocode where the arts activity was, like how much money do you make on your art? How much do you spend as you're making your art? Where do you make it? Where do you spend it? That sort of thing. And then how much donated or contributed art or services do you do? And then put a number on that. So we've got the technology, but we just don't have, again, the organization, which should probably come out of some of these planning processes. And the only thing that I would say to the planning process is we've had other plans, from Oakland sharing the vision to the mayor's economic development, Mayor Dellum's economic development task force on arts and economic development. We just haven't had the execution piece. We've got plans, but we just don't have the execution piece.
I think we have time for one more question.
Will this presentation be made available? I see it's being recorded. Will I have access to view it afterwards?
Yes.
Because this is a star-studded panel right here, and I'm super impressed. And I'm so proud that you all are representing the city of Oakland and what needs to happen regarding cultural arts and how we continue to grow and move in the right direction. Because I truly think we are. We're making some headway that I haven't seen in many, many years. And in a lot of ways, you all are on the forefront of it. And I want to thank you for that. And I also want to just piggyback on what LaTora was saying. The visuals are key. And I think so many times artists and just everyday people, especially people of color, are just so busy struggling just to exist here that it's really difficult to see what's coming. And I just wanted to drop, I don't know, Christy, if you spoke to the changing in the maps that are coming up in 2026 with opportunity zones. They were passed years ago as a way to invest in disadvantaged economic areas. And I think we need to be really in front of that if we're talking about investing in other places in Oakland outside of the downtown area. Because if the maps are drawn appropriately, which doesn't tend to happen in the city of Oakland, we could see a lot more investment in places like Deep East Oakland and West Oakland that are entirely deserving, but rarely get the resources that they need for people to succeed. And housing is going to be critical to that, and the work Rashida is doing is so critical to that. And we just need to be ahead of the curve in order to keep up. And I realize that it's difficult to do that. And I want you all to push on me. I'm in crisis 24/7, but part of that is making sure that we have the resources that we need for communities who've been left out of the conversation, not at the table, to do what we need to do to stay rooted here. So just like, hey, Carol, what's going on? What's on the forefront? What are you working on? What are you hearing about? So I can be more available to you all to talk about what's on the horizon. I think the opportunity zones is a big one. So Chrissy, I see you got the microphone, so if you want to speak to that, please let me know. But we're in conversation, the mayor's office with the governor's office to figure out what that looks like for Oakland right now. Yeah. We all need to be a part of this conversation.
That is Councilmember Carol Fife that was just speaking. Did you want to answer that?
Yeah, I first of all just want to thank you, Councilmember Fife. You've been an incredible partner, at least for the 2 years I've been here with EWD, in really ensuring that our community's voices are front and center for many of the policies, which we were talking about some of them earlier. We did not talk about opportunity zones, and speaking of, our jargon here in government, what that is it used to be, it was a temporary designation that allows for certain parts of both rural and urban communities to leverage investment by providing for an incremental increase over time on the future value of an investment. So all that jargon to say that you invest in a block as a developer, you build housing, you're going to make a certain amount of profit. And so that amount of profit is then reinvested in the community to provide for lower costs of construction, lower cost of development. And so it's meant to incentivize folks investing in a community. That was temporary, and one of the things that came out of the Trump administration was to make that permanent. And so what it does is it removes some of the temporary status, and so it allows for investors to plan in advance. And so we're in the process right now, as Councilmember Fife said, to work with the governor's office to provide a plan for the state of California on where we want those opportunity zones to be. Oakland does have some now. They did not have the impact that we had expected. Again, because of temporary status, probably because we also didn't set ourselves up in order to market those and to sell them to investor communities. So that is where the opportunity is what investors are we trying to bring in? What are the values they're bringing in? Are they aligned with what it is that we're hearing from community, where we want to stabilize our neighborhood corridors? We want to build affordable and accessible housing and more of it so that we're not displaced because of new investment. So that's the strategy in terms of how we're looking at it from my department. How do we use it to stabilize, draw in investment, but not to facilitate displacement? We really want to make sure that the communities that are surrounding these business corridors where the development will happen will benefit, will stabilize. Folks will be able to open businesses, create jobs, and build wealth. That is economic and community development.
Thank you. And we have one more question.
Hello, my name is Patrick Sims. I'm the audio person that's doing this right now.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate you. I always give it up for the sound guy.
It's a career path.
It is from music to sound and video. Just an observation in the last 3 weeks, 3 weeks and about 2 months. I've worked with Lions Ballet, the BFA program in Dominican University. I've worked at Mills College or Northeastern, Counterpulse, Dance Mission, Brava Theater, as well as Safe House for the Arts. And what I'm trying to say is that Mission Cultural Center is closing. Safe House for the Arts is on their last leg. They just had will have their last show on the 21st. Counterpulse is in crisis. They are laying staff off this month. The director left, they replaced her, and that person lasted 1 week. BFA program at Lions Ballet is being sunset in 2027. So a lot of the spaces I'm working is in San Francisco. There's an opportunity for Oakland to step in where all these places have established themselves for decades. So I'd keep that in mind. And it's not just that I'm looking for jobs. I have my own thing. Yeah. I'm interested in Malanga because I actually worked at Malanga when Grown Woman Dance Company did their yearly Juneteenth, and I still work with them. So I'd love to know what's going on with that as well. And Damone is coming here after from Malanga to chat. Anyway, that's my observation. There's opportunities, and Oakland, I think, a year ago I was still living in San Francisco. I'm an Oakland resident now. So.
Yes, thank you.
I just wanted to say one thing. Thank you for the observation. I think the general plan update process is really a good way to start addressing some of these things. Like, we have all these plans and documents and opportunities that are coming up. The general plan is supposed to be like the guiding document for the city that sets the vision for what we want to be. So like using tools like land use, which is pretty boring sometimes, but it really talks about like what we want the city to look like, where we want to invest in arts and cultural institutions that are longstanding. And so I think like Randolph said, like it's like you guys have the opportunity to engage in this process, but we also want to be really available to all the different communities. So, the relationship building that Christy and Ryan spoke about, like, feel free. I have my cards if you guys want to have that. Like, feel free to contact me for anything that you're thinking about, any ideas that you think are relevant for us to be thinking about on a citywide level, because you guys know the best about what are the ways for us to like actually support arts and culture in real meaningful ways. And so, like Christy said, we're trying to get out into the communities all across the city, not just downtown. So like, if you want us to come to a meeting in the Laurel District or in Sobrante Park or whatever, like, we want to be there. We want to co-create strategies with you all. If you want us to help us develop presentations, develop like interactive ways to talk about these sort of like very complex and abstract concepts sometimes, like, we want to be able to do that to ensure that people can actually see what these plans mean visually in real time. So just saying that, please email us, please ask us to be somewhere, we will want to be there. Thank you.
Thank you.
He has a question. Yeah.
Yes, okay.
While you're getting the microphone, I still want to uplift what Latoya was saying in terms of timeline, and maybe my purpose really here today is to continue to be a bit of a translator. I was in policy, so when I graduated from college, I worked in policy. And I stopped working in policy because it took so long for policy to happen. And you were speaking about a timeline, and I recognize that many of us, the attrition that you see, the exodus that you see of peoples in Oakland has a lot to do with affordability. A general plan that takes 20 years does nothing to impact somebody's bottom line, and real time scenario right now, it's great to be able to strategize. We want to be able to strategize. I should probably sit in the middle of the floor because I'm here on the panel, but I'm really wanting to advocate for the people and what I think I'm hearing in some of the queries. What do we do? Oakland has been in crisis triage mode for as long as I can recall. I'm born and raised here. What do we do about retaining the talent and the gifts and the people that are here now so that they can benefit from the fruits of their strategizing and labor that will impact the 20-year plan, 20 years from now? I'm curious, and I think if I'm feeling y'all, and maybe y'all outside the walls as well, we're interested in those conversations as well about the right now triage moment for arts and culture, for business owners in Oakland.
My name is Emmanuel, and I'm an immigrant. I've been here in Oakland for only a few years, and I've come to love it and cherish it, and now it's home for me, right? And for what I see, I engage with a lot of young people, and I had a meeting with some of them recently, and we talked about a whole lot of high stuff that's like from the federal government and policies and at that level. And then I started to ask them, how about the policies at the local level, at the district level and all of that? Because I wanted to understand. And many of them had no idea what is going on in the cities. They just know what's happening at the federal level. And it's a major challenge because I do think that because we're seeing a pattern where many of the locals are moving away from Oakland and many immigrants and foreigners are moving in, we're seeing that over time, and if that pattern continues, we'll have a population who do not have a sentimental attachment to the cultural heritage of Oakland. Now, my question is, how do we get these new people excited and have a corporate buy-in so that the cultural heritage can still be celebrated many years from now? That's my question. Thank you.
Thank you, Emmanuel. Once again, I think kind of what Latoya spoke about earlier and what we were talking about in terms of inspiring the pipeline, because I think this question is in the same line. One, I think translating some of these very dense concepts, plans, ideas, strategies into accessible language, accessible visuals, so that people can engage, because as Councilmember Fife said, we're busy, right? So if this plan, if these things, I think what you created as well, Rashida, is excellent. If they can be accessible to us, not just in terms of language, not to say that we can't understand what's in the plan, but if they can be bite-sized, if they can be accessible, you pointed to the walls. Like, if we can put them up on the walls so that we can engage while we're in transit, if they're up in the BART station, if they're up on the buses, if we can engage, anywhere, if we can engage with what the plans, the visions, the ideas are for the city, who we need to be making relationship with, then I think we might find that we'll have more engagement from the populace. But right now, I feel like the populace, young, old, everybody in between, feels like it's inaccessible, and it is inaccessible. It's every even in our conversations today, it's been more about you have to come to us, you have to come to the city, you have to be a part of the meetings. And I agree, with the disciplinary kind of strategy of we all need to show up. I fully am buy-in on that concept, but I also acknowledge, after living here for too many years. I'm not going to tell you my age, but after living here and I'm born and raised, right? I know that kind of tact is not one that keeps people sustainably engaged, as you have said, Randolph. For the long haul, as administrations turn over, so on and so forth, we need folks who want to be engaged. Part of wanting to be engaged is making the information accessible and readily available for people. And it's not to say that the engagement meetings that you all are conducting and all of that is not something. It is absolutely something. But I think we could go a step further, as those of us with resources, limited as they may be, we can go a step further in reaching a hand out to the population that we want to engage. So again, this is where I think culture really makes up some of the difference. I think artists can translate those plans into visuals. I think artists can translate those plans into entertainment. I think artists can translate those plans into songs, into workshops, into engagements that are appealing and attractive and accessible, and give everybody an entry into the larger conversation that will impact our future.
I think that's a great way to end. I want to thank all of our panelists. Thank you, Randolph, Kalila, Christy, and Ryan. Please give them a hand. And thank you all for coming.